You've decided to change before. Maybe it was a habit you knew was hurting you, a pattern in your relationships you could see clearly, a version of yourself you kept promising you'd leave behind. You meant it. You weren't lying to yourself. The intention was real. And then, slowly, without fully noticing how it happened, you were back. Same behavior, same cycle. Same quiet disappointment in yourself that you've learned to carry without showing. This isn't a story about weakness. It isn't about discipline or motivation or not wanting it badly enough. Because the people who struggle most to change are often the ones who want it the most. And if you've ever looked at your own life and genuinely asked, "Why can't I just change?" This video is going to give you the answer psychology actually has for that question. Before anything else, one thing needs to be said clearly. The reason most people never change has nothing to do with character. It has nothing to do with intelligence, effort, or how much you care. The reason is structural. It's biological. And it begins with a fundamental misunderstanding of what change actually requires. Most people approach change as a decision. They believe that if they want something badly enough, if they think about it clearly enough, commit to it firmly enough, the behavior will follow. But that's not how the brain works. Decisions live in the conscious mind. Behavior is driven by something much older, much faster, and much more resistant to reason. Change isn't a choice you make once. It's a system you have to rebuild. And most people never change because no one ever showed them how that system actually works. There are 5 core reasons this happens. They show up across psychology research, across therapy rooms, across every person who has ever genuinely tried and still found themselves exactly where they started. Reason 1, the identity gap. Every behavior you have is connected to an identity you hold. Not just what you do, but who you believe you are. And when the change you're trying to make conflicts with that identity, the brain treats it as a threat. You can want to become a more confident person while simultaneously holding a belief that says, at your core, you are someone who struggles socially. You can want to break a habit while the deeper story says that habit is part of who you are. Until the identity shifts, the behavior always returns. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall back to the level of your self-image. Reason 2, the comfort of the familiar. The brain does not evaluate your habits based on whether they are good for you. It evaluates them based on whether they are known. Familiar patterns, even painful ones, register as safe. New behaviors, even beneficial ones, register as uncertain. This is why people return to relationships that hurt them, to routines that drain them, to thought patterns they consciously reject. The nervous system mistakes familiarity for safety. And safety, to the brain, is always preferable to growth. Reason 3, the gap between insight and rewiring. This is one of the most misunderstood elements of change. People believe that understanding a problem is the same as solving it. You've probably experienced this yourself. You know exactly why you do what you do. You can trace it back to its origin. You can articulate the pattern with complete clarity, and you still can't stop. Insight is necessary, but insight alone does not rewire the neural pathways that make behavior automatic. Knowing something in your mind and changing something in your nervous system are 2 entirely different processes. One happens through thinking. The other only happens through repetition, environment, and time. Reason 4, the environment stays the same. Most people try to change themselves while keeping everything around them identical. Same triggers, same spaces, same social dynamics, same daily sequence. But behavior doesn't happen in isolation. It's cued by context. The brain is constantly scanning the environment for signals that tell it which pattern to run. When those signals stay the same, the pattern stays the same. Change without environmental redesign is like trying to swim upstream. Possible in short bursts, exhausting over time, and usually temporary. Reason 5. The timeline is wrong. People expect change to feel like a decision that holds. They expect the new behavior to get easier quickly, to feel natural within days or weeks. When it doesn't, when the urge returns, when the old pattern resurfaces, when it still feels like effort after 3 weeks, they interpret that as evidence that the change isn't working, that they're failing, that maybe they're just not someone who changes. But the neuroscience tells a different story. Deep behavioral patterns take months of consistent repetition to genuinely rewire. The discomfort people interpret as failure is often simply the middle of the process. They stop before the shift completes, and then they begin again from the beginning. So what does change actually look like when it works? It starts with identity, not behavior. Instead of focusing on what you want to do differently, you ask who you need to become. Small actions that are consistent with a new self-concept compound over time into something the brain begins to recognize as normal. It requires environmental change alongside internal change. Remove the cues. Redesign the context. Make the old behavior harder and the new behavior easier, not through willpower, but through structure. And it requires patience with the timeline, not passive waiting, active repetition, day after day, even when it still feels like effort. Especially when it still feels like effort. Because that effort is the rewiring happening. That discomfort is not the sign of failure, it is the process itself. If you have tried to change and found yourself back at the beginning, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply working with an incomplete understanding of what change actually demands. The people who change aren't the ones who wanted it more than you. They're the ones who stopped fighting their own nervous system and started working with it instead. That shift, from effort against yourself to effort with yourself, is where real change becomes not just possible, but inevitable. If this resonated with you, subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the psychology behind the patterns most people spend their entire lives never questioning.